I discovered a terrifying secret that lurks between my legs and the haunted market. I never should have opened that door. I felt that knot in my stomach, that cold press of fear. It was a regular Thursday evening, just like every other. The kind of day where I stumbled through work, counting down the minutes until I could hit the market my escape. But when I stepped into that dimly lit alley, a chill snaked down my spine. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of damp wood and something acrid, like decay. Shadows twisted and flickered under the glow of a single, buzzing light bulb. Each step I took echoed in my ears, bouncing off the crumbling brick walls around me. I should have turned back. I should have known better. I glanced around, veering my eyes toward the stalls covered in grimy cloth, old dolls with glassy eyes that seemed to follow me, jars filled with unidentifiable things, and whispers floating around like smoke. My heart raced, thumping against my chest like a trapped bird. The market was alive, breathing, and it held secrets that clawed at my sanity. Suddenly, a crash. I spun around, my instincts screaming. A metal pot, rusted and forgotten, clattered to the ground. The noise reverberated through the narrow space. Had someone else come to this forsaken place? I inched towards the source, every nerve tingling. The shadows danced, shifting ominously. The darkness seemed thick enough to slice. That I felt it then, a creeping presence. I could almost hear it, the soft rustling right behind me, the hushed whispers from unseen mouths. I fought the urge to turn and run. My breath quickened. I knew I was alone out here, or at least I thought I was. But that gut feeling wouldn't fade, it only intensified. Just a trick of the light, I muttered to myself, but the words felt hollow. I pressed forward, my pulse a constant drum in my ears. My flashlight flickered, casting a beam that quivered like my fingers. The stalls seemed to lean in closer, their eerie occupants waiting, watching. What were they waiting for? Then, out of the corner of my eye, a figure slipped between two stalls, cloaked in shadow. I froze, my heart hammering louder. I strained to see, to discern a face, any detail. But it was just a blur. Fear wrapped itself around me like a vice, squeezing tighter as I felt it, a cold, rustling breeze that whispered my name, dragging me closer toward the unknown. I stumbled back, my breath hitching, weak knees trembling. The whisper grew into a roar, a million voices merging into one, calling me deeper into the darkness. What was waiting for me in that haunted market? I gripped the wall, desperately searching for an escape, and then, it came. A violent slamming of a door, echoing through the narrow alley. I spun around, and there it was, a figure cloaked in shadows, towering, its eyes glowing like embers in the night. My scream refused to form, my mouth moving soundlessly as I stumbled back, an icy grip wrapping around my throat. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The grip constricted, an unseen force squeezing my throat, and dread flooded through me like ice water. I clawed at my neck, gasping for breath, but it only tightened the more I struggled. The shadow loomed larger as it stepped into the weak light, revealing grotesque features, warped skin stretched tightly over bone, and a mouth that twisted unnaturally, curling into a malicious grin. "My dear," it hissed, its voice slithering through the air, "we've been expecting you." The chill of its words seeped into my very bones, pulling me into a vortex of terror. My instincts screamed at me to run, to escape, but each bash of my heart was drowned out by the cacophony of whispers rising around us. They grew louder, echoing from the stalls, weaving an intricate tapestry of despair. Fragments of sentences, snippets of unintelligible horror mingled with my name, calling me back, deeper into that suffocating darkness. With a gasping wheeze, I tore free from the constricting air, stumbling back against the wall with a thud. I blinked, desperate to focus, and just as quickly as it appeared, the figure darted back into the shadows, fading like a nightmare. Yet the echoes of its laughter stayed behind, a macabre melody playing on a loop in my mind. "Leave while you can, sweet girl," another voice crooned, softer yet laced with malice. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, enveloping me. I pivoted, scanning the stalls furiously, every shadow now tauntingly alive. Each doll that sat in silent observation felt like a specter, their glassy eyes gleaming with malevolence that I turned on my flashlight, the weak beam barely cutting through the oppressive darkness. The shadows shifted, mocking my frailty, as I edged toward the exit, each step turning the whispers into a menacing crescendo. Suddenly, a figure emerged from behind a nearby stand, a woman, pale and gaunt, with hollow cheeks and tangled hair. She reached out, her fingers brushing the air like she tried to grasp something just beyond reach. "Help," she whispered urgently, but it was drowned out by the heightened murmur of voices around me, thrashing against my senses. "Help me before they take me too. What are you?" I choked, fear tainting each syllable. "What is this place?" She looked past me, eyes wide in silent terror, and then her expression shifted, a flash of pain as something unseen gripped her. Her head jerked violently, her mouth contorting into a silent scream, before her body slumped. In that moment, I realized her eyes no longer reflected the light. They were empty, hollowed out by some unseen force feeding on her very essence. The sound of dragging feet caught my attention, snapping me back into the moment. I discerned a figure edging closer from the same dim corner where the first shadow had vanished. My heart raced, thumping like a war drum as I caught sight of it, a grotesque silhouette, something beyond comprehension, a twisted amalgam of flesh and shadow, creeping toward me, sliding closer through the thrumming darkness that I needed to escape. My instincts roared, and I bolted for the exit. The shadows swirled like a violent storm around me, wrapping tendrils of darkness that tugged at my clothes, sharp as claws. The whispers crescendoed, now howling like 1,000 tortured souls clamoring for release. Just as I reached the end of the alley, a thick fog rolled in, coiling about my ankles like a serpent, slowing my frantic escape. My breath came in shallow gasps, and with one last desperate cry, I sprinted toward the echoing exit. But the threshold felt farther with each step, and the weight of the market bore down upon me, as though it sought to reclaim what it had so cruelly marked. Then, through the ghastly mist, I saw it. The door stood ajar, a faint glow beckoning me forward. But just as I reached for the handle, a hand shot out from the darkness beside me, grabbing my wrist with crushing force. "Stay with us," it rasped, an unfamiliar voice penetrating the deafening chaos. I met its gaze, now locked in a struggle not just for my life, but for the very essence of who I was, and then, reality slipped away as the door slammed shut behind me, plunging me into an engulfing silence. All that remained were the shadows, swirling and twisting to the rhythm of my panic-laden heart. As I faced the horrifying truth, I was not alone, and whatever lurked in that market was not done with me yet. The darkness thickened around me, and from it emerged a chorus of long-lost souls, their faces lined with horror, their eyes reflecting pure despair. I felt myself being drawn back, pulled into their depths deeper than I ever imagined possible. Each gasp for breath a chaotic struggle against the inexorable darkness, and then, a voice emerged, chilling my blood: "You belong to us now." The air thinned, a suffocating presence wrapping around me as I found myself dragged deeper into the throes of the unsettling psalm being sung by the lost souls around me. Despair radiated from their forms like a black fog, curling around my throat and squeezing the scream back down into my chest. The faces twisted in agony, each etched with a tale of woe that made a mockery of the life I once knew. "Well, what do you want from me?" I stammered, feeling the weight of their collective sorrow pressing against my chest, constricting my breaths into desperate wheezes. The voice, the one that whispered promises of belonging, reverberated through the darkened air. "You know what you did. You wanted to know our secrets." It hissed, each word entwining with my name like a venomous vine. I felt a wave of dread wash over me. Its familiarity flickered like a distant memory. Had I been drawn here by my own curiosity, my hunger for answers? As realization grew, the shadows around me twisted with agitation, their whispers rising to a cacophonous din. I closed my eyes, willing the frantic voices to quiet, each clamoring to tell their story. Suddenly, I felt the earth shift beneath me. A low tremor echoed through the ground, leading my senses to hone in on a small, sinister tunnel emerging between two crumbling walls. An ancient stone barely glimmered with the remnants of a strange symbol, its patterns swirling like the very shadows that clung to me. With a mix of morbid fascination and sheer terror, I inched closer to the threshold of the tunnel. The darkness exuded a palpable energy, a breath of cold air rolling out across my ankles, beckoning me to venture inside. But even as every instinct screamed against it, a morose fascination rooted me to the spot, urging me forward. "Join us, my dear. You shall know the truth that lies beneath this cursed market," a disembodied voice cooed with nauseating sweetness, as though woven directly from the essence of despair itself. My feet moved against my better judgment, crossing the threshold as the voices peaked in anger and pain behind me. I stepped into the tunnel, plunging deeper into an oppressive blackness that carried the scent of decay and memories long forgotten. The chill skittered across my skin, and I shivered, suddenly aware of the frantic beating of my heart echoing in the tight space. Tiny pinpricks of light flickered like distant stars against the walls, showing remnants of something terrible, perhaps signs of a life once vibrant, now consumed by shadows. An ancient mural swam into view, a horrific tableau depicting a marketplace bustling with figures, but their faces were grotesque, their mouths gaping in silent screams. A chill crawled down my spine as I realized the figures bore uncanny resemblances to those trapped souls, each of their despairing faces signifying a pact made with the shadows. They had all sought something: answers, love, or perhaps courage, and in return, the darkness claimed their essence, twisting it into a wretched form. "How did I end up here?" I murmured, the air thick with despair. Behind me, the faint whispers grew more frenzied, as though the very souls who resonated with my questions sought to drown me in their own fates. Suddenly, a dissonant laughter erupted from the shadows, and the chill flew away like a startled bird. I spun around, heart racing, but all that met my gaze was the tunnel's sinister stretch further into darkness. "I can help you find your way, disoriented one," came the slithering hiss of a different presence, echoing right behind me. The stench of rot and decay wafted against my neck as I turned slowly, breath hitching in my throat. Glimmering in the shadows was a figure not unlike the first, but this one was far grander, draped in tattered remnants of what once might have been regal attire. Its eyes burned like embers, molten and cruel, locked onto me with hunger. "Why struggle against the inevitable? You too shall illuminate the murky depths of your desires." But first it stepped closer, revealing a mouth strewn with jagged teeth that glistened in anticipation. Panic gripped my insides, and the world spun into chaos. I staggered back, trying to retreat, but the tunnel seemed to morph and close around me, the walls fraying like webs woven of interlinked nightmares. Just as I felt my body break into a sprint down the claustrophobic passage, the shadows erupted around me, merging and shifting into a growing storm of malice. I felt their fingers tug at my hair, pulling, clutching, yanking me closer to the grasp of unfathomable darkness. "Stay forever," they moaned in unison. With a fierce cry, I summoned every ounce of will left within me and plunged deeper into the choking abyss, desperately searching for light, for freedom, and for the truth buried beneath the curses that twisted through the market above. But as hope began to flicker with the remnants of fading consciousness, something crawled from the depths of that tunnel, a sharp, stinging sensation creeping through my legs, raking away the last vestiges of my will. A searing pain shot through me, and with one final, breathless scream, the dark shadows enveloped me, dragging me into an unseen fate, echoing the words I dreaded most: "You will never escape." As the last echo of my scream faded into the suffocating silence, I plunged deeper into the abyss, my senses swirling in chaotic disarray. I became aware of a distinct sensation creeping along my skin, a strange, chilling slither that teased the edges of my consciousness. It was not just the physical pain of the shadow's grip, something new was entwining around my legs, a searing tendril of darkness that wrapped tighter with every frantic movement. I twisted and turned, desperate to escape the suffocating darkness that throbbed around me. Gasping, I tried to claw my way back to the fading light of the tunnel entrance, but the abyss pulled me further into its depths. The grotesque laughter rose again from the shadows, a sound devoid of any humanity, echoing against the stone walls like the rattle of chains, filling the air with dread. "Turn back, lost one," the mocking voice cooed, laced with venomous delight. "You've come far, yet the end is not nearly within your grasp." With every breath, the air thickened, tastes of iron and salt washing over my tongue. The weight of the figures those who had come before me seemed to hang heavier, their despair digging into my soul like a dagger. The murmurings of their regrets whirled into a tempest, each soul urging me toward the solace of the wretched fate they bore. A sudden tug around my leg sent shocks of fear coursing through me. I looked down to see the shadows not only clinging but writhing, morphing into grotesque faces of sorrow and malice, their mouths stretching open into silent screams. Small, clawing hands reached up from the ground, trying to pull me into a vast ocean of darkness. My pulse quickened, my mind racing with thoughts of escape, yet each plan seemed futile against the unseen force that festered around me. That I kicked and thrashed against the darkness, and then I felt an unmistakable prick, a sharp sting rippling through my skin. I cried out in terror as I was dragged closer to the ground, where intangible shadows moved with a life of their own, scuttling just out of reach. My eyes darted back along the path, a desperate search for a flicker of hope to guide me to safety. Suddenly, the walls of the tunnel seemed to shimmer, revealing fleeting glimpses of shadowed figures embedded into stone, their faces twisted into agonized expressions, their forms merging with the very fabric of the tunnel itself. They were craftsmen of suffering, trapped in their own nightmare, and somehow, their collective pain seeped through the cracks, reaching for me. "No. I can't be like you," I screamed, the words fracturing against the oppressive dark. But my defiance only fueled the laughter, echoing louder and louder until it became an incessant clamor, closing around me like jaws ready to snap. Within that storm of despair, I felt a sudden shift in the energy around me, a cold presence rising from the depths, and I instinctively backed away. Something slithered through the shadows, ominously moving toward me, seeking to bind me to this cursed fate. "Everyone wants a taste of the truth," it whispered sweetly, though I could sense the undertone of wrath beneath its charming facade. "And what a delicious feast lies within you. The want, the desire, so many secrets yet untold." The thick darkness writhed at that claim, and I felt my insides twist, my very essence trembling under its scrutiny. But I knew that to give in would mean total surrender, to lose the thread of myself amid the swirling cacophony of despair. With a surge of desperate clarity, I forced my limbs to move, every ounce of strength bearing down on the walls of the tunnel. I pushed against the shadowy fingers grasping at my skin, feeling their ferocity, but I had to break free. I had to discover the truth without relinquishing my own darkness. Ahead, I glimpsed something shimmering in the dark, a thread of silver light flickered faintly, a tangible reminder of hope amidst the nightmare. I lunged toward it, my heart racing, a prayer of release spilling from my lips, but as I did, the shadowy hands tightened around me in fevered rage, pulling with a dreadful strength. The laughter transformed into shrieks of anguish, echoing through the tunnel, a forewarning of the horrors I had yet to face. My senses heightened in that moment, and just as I reached for the shimmering light, an awful, dissonant voice hissed into my ear, "You cannot escape your fate." The ground trembled beneath my feet, and as the cacophony swelled, the shadows morphed into a swirling storm, barreling toward me with a force that sent chills dancing along my spine. I felt the darkness tear at the fabric of my being, swallowing me whole as the flicker of light dimmed into nothingness, and then, just as I was consumed, the world fell silent and I in that unbearable stillness, a surge of consciousness jolted through me. I was no longer confined to my body. I floated between a haze of dread, catching glimpses of twisted memories flickering like candle flames. I saw faces. My face. I saw people I loved, their laughter turning to gasps, blending into screams of torment, and then all became shadows. "Welcome," came the familiar voice, now laced with deeper malice. "You've come to embrace your truth. But first, let us see how many layers of horror you can shed before you can reach your heart." And then darkness swallowed me completely, breaking apart my thoughts, revealing nothing, until, with a rippling surge, I felt the warm wetness against my skin. My breath hitched as I became aware of something writhing between my legs, pulling, tugging in a desperate grasp, that I was not just a spectator in this realm. I was becoming part of its terrible truth. The unsettling sensation coiled tighter, an icy dread enveloping me as I realized the horror of my predicament. I was no longer floating in some distant, ethereal plane, I was anchored to a canvas of flesh and bone, connected to the source of the relentless pull. I forced my eyes open, and what I saw ignited a new wave of terror. Emerging from the shadows, a twisted mass of darkness consumed my lower body, coiling and writhing like a serpent. It was not merely an extension of the shadows but a grotesque amalgamation of faces hollow and mournful, each one etching a raw memory of suffering into my soul. Their eyes, sunken and empty, flickered with desperation, mouths agape in silent cries that pierced the depths of my psyche. "Join us," they whispered, their voices mingling into an unholy chorus that resonated with relentless longing. Become one with the abyss. As they tugged at my flesh, I felt the potency of their despair. It was as if the weight of 1,000 fates bore down upon me, compelling me to submit. Panic surged through me, igniting every instinct to fight, yet the grip of the shadows sent icy tendrils of resignation creeping up my spine. I struggled against their pull, but each thrash only intensified the cacophony of their yearning, echoing my own insecurities and fears. Driven by a primal urge to escape this macabre union, I summoned every shred of will within me and thrashed as fiercely as the shadowy captors would permit. Suddenly, the figures began to dissolve, a billowing mass of rage that flickered and shifted, revealing glimpses of a vast market under the low-hanging mist of despair. Ahead, shadowy stalls lined a desolate path, their peculiar wares seemingly flickering in and out of existence. I caught sight of grotesque trinkets, melded of bones and glass, shimmering yet twisted, reminiscent of souls forgotten in the void. My heart sank as the realization washed over me. This was not merely a market, it was a marketplace of lost souls, bartering with memories and regrets for items steeped in anguish. As I stumbled forward, the air thickened with the scent of decay and desperation, mingling with faint cries that echoed through the shadows. They seemed to curl around me, teasing my subconscious shadows of faces I recognized, friends, family, each one a reminder of the cycle I now found myself entwined in. "Look closely," a voice called, silky yet sharp, like the touch of ice against my skin. I turned to see a figure partially cloaked in shadow, its features obscured but for a smile that revealed a mouth full of jagged teeth. "Pick and choose the memories you cherish, or perhaps the ones you dread. Here, they become currency." Panic gripped my heart as I glanced back at the stalls. Horrific sights filled my vision, a jar containing a flickering light, an ember of hope, and beside it, a shadowy form cradling it with ethereal care. A woman, forever trapped in her moment of joy, she smiled even as her image shifted to one of despair, making me question the price of such a treasure. "What will you trade?" The shadowed figure pressed, eyes glinting with malicious glee. "What memory holds you captive? What truth do you dread most? Leave me alone." I managed to scream, shame and anger flooding through me, combining with the tang of fear. I stumbled backward, desperate to escape my fate and the spectral figure that seemed to thrive on my discomfort. But behind me, the darkness shifted again, and a fevered whispering rose from below, an array of hands, clawing their way back to me, ignited by my rejection of the offer. "You cannot escape what lies in wait," they wailed, their voices rising into a cacophony of despair. "We know your truth. We know your desire." With my heart pounding, I turned to flee deeper into the labyrinth of lost souls and memories. I wove through the stalls, but shadows clung to my heels, snatching at cloth and flesh. Horror painted every step as I raced past faces, both familiar and strange, trapping itself in my mind, memories desperately clawing their way to the surface. Then I stumbled upon a stall. Adorned with remnants of my own past, the faces of my loved ones grinning in frozen agony. A sudden realization struck me like a bolt of lightning, each face was a mixture of joy and despair, fragments of moments I had experienced. From the depths of my memory, a single voice rang clear, "Open yourself to the truth, sweet one. We shall guide you." It was a chilling invitation, transforming within the confines of my panic-laden heart. With no thought, I gripped a curiously ornate box, its surface warm to the touch, and pried it open. A ghastly wail erupted around me as a ghastly light burst forth, swamping the surrounding shadows in a flash. The faces grimaced, writhing in agony, and as the light poured forth, I became aware of a new presence lurking within the depths of my consciousness. Then, the world around me abruptly collapsed into a growing void, and the silence became deafening. Before I could react, the shadows swirled violently, pulling me back toward a dark pit, fed not just by my fears but also by the longing whispered from the very depths of my soul. As the darkness opened beneath me, I caught one last glimpse of the figure's smile, wide and full of malice, before the abyss consumed me. "Let us see how many layers of horror you can shed before the heart seeks out its truth," it whispered, and the fear finally yielded to an unearthly darkness as I fell deeper into the unknown, the echo of my screams melding with the shadows that would forever bind me. I fell through the blackness, the sound of my heartbeat deafening against the silence. A thick, cloying sensation enveloped me, as if the darkness had substance, wrapping around me like an oily shroud. I feared I would never stop falling, spiraling endlessly into an abyss where the terror of the unknown morphed into a familiar dread. But just as I thought my mind would shatter beneath the weight of despair, I landed hard. The impact knocked the breath from my lungs, and I gasped for air, only to choke on the damp, fetid scent that filled the air. Pain lanced through my body, radiating from my legs, which felt as if they were submerged in cold tar. I glanced down to find them entwined in dripping tendrils of darkness, squirming limbs that felt alive, pulling tight against my skin and anchoring me to the ground. As I struggled to free myself, the oppressive sounds of the market returned. I could hear the chaotic murmurs of the lost souls, their cries swirling around me like an insistent wind. Despair hung thick in the air, weaving through the shadows of flickering lanterns that cast an eerie glow over the scene. I had no idea how far I had fallen or where I truly was, but dread gnawed at my insides, growing with each heartbeat. "Welcome back." The voice pulled me from my thoughts, low and smooth like a serpent sliding through grass. I turned slowly to face the source, my heart pounding as I found the shadowy figure once more, its form darker than the void it emerged from, with eyes smoldering like coals. "We've been expecting you. Let me go," I shouted, attempting to bellow defiance, but my voice faltered, weakened by fear. The figure stepped closer, the malevolence radiating from it suffocating. It chuckled softly, echoing through the air like broken glass scraping against stone. "Ah, sweet child. It's not up to me," it said playfully, leaning in with a smile that threatened to consume the light around us. "It is the void that demands you now. You are one of us." With that, the creature outstretched a hand toward my legs, its fingers brushing against the murky tendrils that bound me. As it touched the mass, it convulsed and twisted, pulling at my flesh in a desperate plea. The agony was instantaneous. It felt as though my skin was being ripped apart, each tangle burrowing itself deeper until it reached my very core. I gasped for breath, but my mouth felt dry and ash-laden, the air heavy with the weight of the damning shadows. "Can you feel them? The souls trapped within? Their pain reflects your own, you know," the figure cooed, leaning closer still, its breath cold against my cheek. "They clamor for your attention, for their stories to be told. So many regrets, sweet one. Are you ready to listen?" "No," I screamed, desperation surging through me as panic clawed at my throat. I writhed against the shadows that threatened to tear me apart and pulled away from the figure, summoning the last remnants of my strength. But as I strained against my bonds, each flick of my limbs only seemed to deepen the hold the tendrils had on me. "Every memory matters here," it continued, its voice sliding like oil into my skull. "There are those who await you, longing for the moment you admit your darkest truths. You've only scratched the surface. Each layer holds a horror to uncover. Stop. I don't want any part of this." I felt tears crawling down my cheeks, tracing paths of despair as I trembled, utterly lost within the cacophony of anguish surrounding me. The faces of lost souls swirled in my mind, beloved friends and family who had been pulled into this nightmare. I could not let their fates intertwine with my own. "Say the word," the figure hissed, the shadows pulsating, encouraging, taunting, "and I shall set you free. But remember, freedom is a lie held tightly by chains of truth." The shadows around me began to shift, clumping together until they formed shapes. Familiar shapes, recognizable forms, the faces of those I knew, and yet twisted in expressions of terror. They appeared in flashes, smiles flickered briefly before turning to screams of anguish, their mouths stained with a darkness that spread like poison. A sudden realization struck with a brutal force: these were the memories I had buried deep within, the pain I had refused to acknowledge. And here they stood, haunting manifestations of my fears, each chain pulling tighter around my heart. No, no. The word clawed at my throat, desperate for escape, and I had to fight it. This was a different kind of battle, one where I could not simply flee. I could feel the souls clawing at my legs, an insidious craving for recognition and understanding that rattled my mind. The figure grinned wider, and in that moment, I knew its triumph. You cannot deny them, sweet one. In this market of shattered dreams, the cost is always your truth. Accept it, and maybe you will find peace, or at the very least, some form of freedom. In a moment of clarity, I steeled myself, desiring above all to shatter this cycle. I refuse. I screamed, the volume of my voice rippling outwards like a wave. It was then that all at once the shadows reeled back, and the faces contorted in disbelief, swirling in chaos, but only for a heartbeat. Then, the air shifted, resonating with an unseen force. The ground beneath me trembled violently, reverberating through the tormented realm like a slow awakening. Foolish girl. The figure screeched, the glee extinguished, darkness compressing, swirling dangerously faster. You cannot unring the bell. Your choices have consequences. Suddenly, the tendrils binding my legs began to throb with my heart, inflating and retracting in time with my breaths. I felt the ground start to give way beneath me, the shadows roaring in agony as they clutched at my ankles, furious at my defiance. In that moment of trepidation, I felt a sudden surge, a new force rising within me, a surge of light that clashed against the darkness as I unleashed my will. You will not take me. I choose my truth. But as my defiance ignited, the veil between realities began to tear, revealing an endless expanse of black stretching into incomprehensible chaos. Shadows surged forward like a ravenous wave, their anguished cries resonating in harmony as they reached for me, claws made of night, threatening to pull me into the depths of lost memories once more. The last thing I felt before the world dissolved was the figure's furious gaze, its smile transformed into a furious snarl. You cannot escape. This is just the beginning. And then, I was pulled into the void, the screams of the souls echoing hauntingly in my mind, blending with my own as I plummeted into a new nightmare, one that promised to reveal the depths of horror still left untouched. In the chaos, a whisper cut through the darkness like a knife. What hides behind your heart will be your undoing. Then everything vanished, leaving me suspended in a fathomless emptiness, where even time itself seemed to hold its breath. I lingered between the edges of existence, suspended in a weightless void where nothing mattered, not even the last flickers of consciousness. I could no longer recall the moments before my descent, nor could I sense a way back to my forgotten life. Only the dreadful echo of that mocking voice lingered, wrapping itself around my mind like a snake tightening its grip. Suddenly, a sensation stirred within me, a horrific familiarity coursing through my veins like poison. I felt the pressure of something ancient, something alive, crawling just beneath my skin, snaking through the marrow of my bones. It was the darkness that had claimed me, awakening the deepest fears I had buried, whispering secrets of eternal torment. Out of nowhere, ignited by an unholy pull, a fragment of the past materialized before me, a boy with sun-kissed laughter. I recognized him immediately. It was Thomas, my childhood friend who had vanished without a trace years ago. He appeared young and untouched, blissfully unaware of the horrors surrounding him. Help me, his voice trembled, a distant echo just out of grasp, urgent and pained. They want to let me go, not until you remember. The words cut deep, ripping through my heart with a serrated edge. I wanted to reach out, to pull him to safety, but my body felt heavy, as though every limb was encased in lead. Thomas! I screamed, my voice swallowed by the abyss. I'm trying. I will not let this happen to you. But he began to shimmer like a mirage, wax and wane, as shadows curled around him. His expression shifted from one of desperation to placid acceptance, and that hurt most of all. "You always wanted to forget," he whispered, fading into the darkness, leaving nothing but an echo of his presence. Before I could process the loss, the void that enveloped me began to pulse violently, stretching the fabric of my being until something ripped through a cold, shrill wail that pierced the silence. Tendrils erupted from the darkness once again, thrumming against my skin like a plague of spiders. They sought not to bind me this time but to consume me, to suck the flame of my very essence and pull me deeper into the shadow. The cries swelled, filling the vacuum of despair, myriad voices layering over one another, all wisps of anguish that begged for release. Help us tell our stories." Their words twisted into a cacophony of sorrow, clawing at my senses. "Enough!" I screamed, desperate to assert my will against the rising tide of despair, but my voice shattered against the encroaching darkness, dissolving into silence and surrender. Their pleas wormed through my mind, gnawing at my sanity and summoning memories too horrific to acknowledge. "Remember this," a new voice sneered, sharp and cutting, as a figure emerged from the depths. It slithered closer, a wretched thing cloaked in nightmares, a twisted reflection of myself, face warped into a grotesque mask of one who had embraced despair. It smiled, predatory and cold as it illuminated the void with grotesque clarity. "Every secret you hide is a chain wrapped tighter around your heart. Let them hear you. Feel their pain." Suddenly, I was overwhelmed. Flashes of my memories surged in rapid succession, like a film loop unspooling. My family's faces tortured by suffering, their eyes wide with sorrow staring back at me. My mother's desperate cries as she held my infant brother, recalling the way darkness had stolen them both, leaving me alone with a grief that proved unbearable. "No," I gasped, as pieces of my soul trembled in trepidation. "I didn't exactly." The creature cackled, pulling closer, shadows coiling around it like a protective cloak. "Your truth waits for you in the darkest corners of your heart, little girl. Will you finally confront them? Or will you let those innocents drown in this unbearable reality alone?" The weight of the world pressed down on me as I battled against the anguish within me, fighting against the monster that threatened to tear me apart. I couldn't let this horror continue. "I will face it. I will find the truth." I roared, the scream echoing against the void. With that declaration, spectral lights ignited around me, creating a swirling tempest of memories, some lost to oblivion, others seething with rage. They enveloped me, drawing me deeper into a dark spiral where forgotten faces pressed in on all sides, features elongated by grief, mouths agape in an eternal scream. As the maelstrom churned around me, I caught sight of a flickering image, an old photograph curling with age, worn and stained. With trembling hands, I reached out to seize it, a sudden understanding igniting within. I had been the architect of this darkness. The flash of recognition jolted me back as the figure lunged, its mouth stretching impossibly wide, whispering dark promises. Each word it spoke wrapped around my mind like the choking sense of burnt memories. "You will become part of us." The ground beneath me rippled, threatening to swallow me whole, but just as I gripped the photograph, the void trembled violently. A blinding light exploded forth, ripping apart the tapestry of reality, yanking my hand into its grasp while shadows shrieked and writhed. I felt myself unraveling. "What lies hidden shall consume you." The howl of the figure echoed before darkness cascaded over me, buried within the encroaching shadow and the blinding light. I turned the photograph toward me. My breath hitched as I gazed upon it, eyes widening in horror. There had to be a way to unravel this, a truth so hidden that finding it would change everything, and just as I was about to remember, the image faded in my hands. "No!" I screamed, my voice barely carrying against the cacophony, but just before I plunged into the abyss, I glimpsed the figure's face, that same twisted reflection of despair racing toward me, brimming with a malevolent hunger. "Your secrets are our feast. You will never escape." Then darkness swept over the land, and I was left alone at the precipice of humility, on the verge of discovering the last ghost of truth before I would fall into a chasm of madness. The cold crept over me like a suffocating shroud, coiling around my limbs and paralyzing my senses. Breath caught in my throat, I fought to make sense of the swirling darkness, my heart pounding to a frantic rhythm. The echoes of haunting whispers melted into a soothing chorus, drenching me in despair even as I lingered at the border of terror, searching for the face behind those eyes that had seen too much. That I blinked through the darkness, straining against the void's oppressive weight. Shadows draped low and coiled around my ankles, tugging me back, urging me to surrender to the slumbering fate that lurked within the fabric of the night. Yet, among the cacophony of voices and the surge of memories, I felt an ember of hope flickering bravely against the darkness. I had to know, I had to confront the horrors that awaited me. With every ounce of will, I gripped the photograph tightly, willing it to reveal the secrets I had buried beneath a constellation of lies. The image remained frustratingly elusive, a specter mockingly dancing just beyond my reach. In that moment, something deep within me stirred a memory, vivid and raw, clawing its way to the surface. That I was back at the market, the haunted marketplace I had forsaken in my youth. The scent of decay lingered in the air, mingling with something foul and sweet, as vendors whispered promises of hidden truths and forbidden knowledge. Stalls were draped in shadows, and a silence droned around me, broken only by the skittering of unseen things weaving through crowds of grotesque figures with hollow eyes staring from the depths of their shrouded faces. "Find me," I heard Thomas whisper again, his voice now echoing down the market aisles, laced with urgency that penetrated the fear. As if compelled, I followed the sound, weaving between the haunted shadows that melded into memory, each stall revealing tantalizing glimpses of my past. The moment I approached one vendor, an old woman hunched with gravity's weight. A jolt of recognition surged through me. She offered a chair, though I could see the tendrils of despair creeping up her neck, glistening as they gripped tighter like a vice. Her eyes glinted with a malevolence I could hardly believe. "What seeks your heart, dear?" Her raspy voice scratched against my spirit, as if it knew more than I cared to accept. "You're drawn to your past, it calls to you like an old friend, doesn't it?" "Let him go," I gasped, words trembling with the shards of fear I bore. "Help me find Thomas." A smirk curled on her lips, revealing teeth that were more like shards of glass than flesh. "Then you must pay the price, child. They're hungry for remembrance." Her hand reached out, and with a flick of her wrist, she unveiled a series of baubles, curiosities glistening in the dim light, each bearing the weight of forgotten histories. Cameras, journals, locks of hair. It was an entanglement of cherished remnants from lives lost to time. My heart thrummed as I recognized the very denouement of secrets. "What do I need to give?" Her laughter echoed sharply, resonating with the anguished whispers that danced behind the veil of existence. "Only what you hold dear, and perhaps your innocence, your sense of self. After all, the deeper your sacrifice, the closer he will return to you." It felt as if the very air around us ignited with psychic energy, anchoring me to the choice she presented. "Think carefully," she continued, her fingers drifting above the items, "for the past you revive will come rushing forward, bearing gifts and curses alike." Just then, an icy draft rustled through the market, causing the stalls to tremble ominously. Shadows flickered like flames, and before I could speak, the vendor's sinister demeanor shifted, her face morphed into a horrific visage of a child's nightmare. "You want the truth? It carries its own weight. Forsake your grasp on what makes you. You will see those who are lost dance upon the strings of your most intimate fears." The words cut deep, a knife twisting in my gut as if the very fabric of existence was daring me into surrender. I felt it then, the tugging of shadows wrapping tighter around my being, whispering of things hidden between the layers of loss, slowly revealing the price I'd have to meet to understand. "Choose." The vendor bellowed, the horrors of her visage flickering in and out like a candle in the wind. "Recall this, your memories can unravel or shatter those you love. What shall it be? What of Thomas?" And in that moment, a ghastly silhouette loomed closer behind me, draping the air in frigid dread. I shuddered, the atmosphere spiraled and tangled into chaos. Half-formed shadows pressed in on me, eyes wide with anticipation, their identities lost amidst the stirring darkness. "No. Not him." I screamed, the realization crashing atop my soul like a tidal wave. Paralyzed by terror, I turned to flee, but the shadows closed in as I stumbled back, only to find Thomas standing before me, translucent and wavering. "I'm here, help me," he whispered. With anguish stabbing through my heart, I felt the shadows pull, leading me deeper into the market, a realm where sin ruminated in the air and sins begot more sins. I will save you, Thomas. I will not lose you again. And just as I reached for his gossamer form, an intense, blinding light erupted from the parchment I clasped tightly in my hand, the photograph slipping away, drawing my connection to him further out of reach. Do not let go. His voice echoed, but I could feel the spiraling grasp of darkness tightening around me, and with a resounding crash, my vision shattered into pieces. Reality fractured, looming with the promise of horrors yet unseen truths that awaited just on the other side of despair. Trust in our union, and all you have lost will culminate into something unspeakable. And just as I teetered on the edge of oblivion, grasping frantically for the light which was that hauntingly familiar laughter, I vanished deeper into the folds of the market, where nightmares and secrets entwined into an abyss that yearned for resolution. And there, buried beneath the crushing weight of despair, the shadows whispered a tormenting secret that might not only consume Thomas but could tear my very existence apart forever. The cold grasp of shadows seemed to constrict tighter, a physical presence suffocating my rebellion. My heartbeat echoed through the market, a faded drum against an impending void. I stumbled deeper, every whisper crawling closer, every flicker of light drowning in darkness, my mind fraying with each breath. Thomas lingered just beyond my grasp, ghostly and ephemeral, as though he belonged to another realm, now a reminder of what I dared not lose again. Find me, he pleaded, his voice distorting into a desperate echo that bounced off the cobbled alleys. I moved towards him, but the ground had shifted beneath my feet, dragging me through a gaping maw of despair. It pulled me further into a labyrinth of secrets embedded within the market's twisted seams, where every stall twitched abysmally, living, breathing conduits of horror. An unsettling sense of familiarity washed over me, igniting my instincts with the dread of recognition. My past loomed ahead, or rather, the remnants of it, alive yet obscured behind the dense fog of lost memories. Faces began to appear in the blink of an eye, shapeless and silent observers whose presence was as jarring as the malicious vendoress laughter ringing in my ears. Then, I saw it, a decrepit stall could have sprung from the depths of a child's nightmare. Muddied glass jars lined the dusty shelves, suspended in a thick layer of something dark and stagnated, a viscous fluid that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Within each jar, fragments shifted and molded into grotesque forms, reflections of those whose choices tethered them to eternal despair. Come closer, a new female voice crooned, sweet yet laced with an undercurrent of malice, a symphony of promises and lies. It emanated from the stall, and before I could comprehend, I found my feet trailing toward it despite the terrifying instinct urging me to run. Witness the price of your desires. The jars glowed softly, illuminating the shapes within, trapped memories of love and anguish, ghostly fables of souls long forsaken. Among them, a tiny hand pressed against one jar's surface, fingers translucent and pleading. It bore an uncanny resemblance to mine from a long-buried past, a reminder of childhood innocence lost and subsequent horrors perhaps better left undisturbed. That I froze, dread leaching through my veins like ice. No, stay away from that. The words scraped through my throat like shards of glass as I took a step back. Each movement seemed to summon the lingering spirits, twisting the air around me, revealing shadows dancing with glee at my profound dread. It is not you who has lost the most, child. The woman rasped, her presence drifting closer, clouded by a tangle of shadows. Rather, it is the choices that led to your very being, a tapestry woven from desires, heartaches, and anguish. The path you've chosen threatens to unravel the very essence of those you cling to. Will you seize the truth, or let the darkness consume all? The shadows grew bolder, brushing against my skin, seeping through the cracks of my fragile resolve. Images flickered behind my eyes, moments I had buried deep, crowded by the overwhelming weight of regret. Nightmares sparkled like fleeting stars, distant echoes of laughter mingled with cries for help. They echoed through the market, filling the air with false belief that perhaps confronting my past could save those I loved. Then, from behind me, a thunderous clap reverberated, turning heads toward a figure completely obscured by dread. Without warning, a silhouette emerged from the murky corners of impending doom, its features concealed under a dark hood. The air crackled as it raised a hand, pulling the jar closer to the front, where the small hand still pressed helplessly against the surface. Innocent, sweet, and vulnerable, the figure's voice resonated deeper than the haunting whispers. Such fragile things, these memories. Do you not wish to free them, to feel the weight of their despair? Let him go. I screamed, feeling shards of my own heart splinter under the impact of that innocent gaze trapped behind glass. I stepped forward instinctively, desperate to obliterate that glassy barrier that imprisoned the flickering remnants of my innocence. What will you sacrifice for this chance? The figure taunted, and the shadows shifted, revealing the grinning faces of those I had lost throughout my life. Ghostly forms inching closer, wisps of anguish nestling like toxins in my mind, each one whispering of past joys now tied to an unending sorrow, threatening to pull me into a vortex of darkness. At that moment, a sound filled the air, a low rumble of anguish that echoed through the haunting market, stirring the shadows into a frenzy. You're running out of time. Thomas's voice cut through the chaos, more desperate than before. My pulse quickened, panic swelling within me. I will not give in. I yelled, feeling the darkness surge, a torrent of grief uncoiling at my feet. But even as hope fought valiantly within, I felt the market itself shift, as if answering the relentless tug of all I had lost. In a terrifying twist, I felt an electric shock of malevolence course through me, an awakening realization taking root. The market wasn't merely a memory, it was a living entity, thriving on my fears and regrets, woven into the smallest threads of my very existence. Then, a sudden scream filled the air, piercing through the cacophony, the scream of a child from a few stalls down, mingling with the voices of memory that stirred around us. The light in the jars flickered like dying stars, and as I turned in horror, I felt a cruel hand grip my wrist, pulling me closer towards the jar. A choice loomed that could rewrite every consequence. Will you embrace the burden? The dark figure hissed, the shadows swirling around it as if waiting for my answer. Or will you let it remain tangled within the lost? And in that moment, everything shattered. The world exploded around me, lights dimming and hope fleeing. Only a terrible emptiness remained as the screaming intensified. As darkness beckoned me into its cold void, I realized it was too late to turn back. Before I could scream, shadows corroded my vision, twisting into darkness, collapsing under the weight of choices yet unmade. The only thing left to hold on to was the pulse of fear spiraling out, unfurling into the chilling realization that the worst was yet to come. Panic overwhelmed me as I felt an icy hand of dread squeeze my heart, squeezing out all the breath in my lungs. The market, the sinister marketplace where grotesque memories mingled with long-buried truths, swirled chaotically around me. Shadows danced under the strained light, creating a macabre tapestry woven from sorrow and despair. But amidst the chaos, one thing remained etched in my mind, the glimmer of hope embodied in Thomas's desperate plea. Find me, Thomas. I screamed, forcing my feet to move, but the shadows clawed at my ankles, pulling me back into the suffocating depths. They whispered secrets, promises laced with malice, trying to veil the path ahead. I fought against their grasp, each attempt to break free only amplifying the wails that surrounded me. Let him go, a voice echoed from somewhere deep within. The figure that had brought me to this abyss returned, its silhouette shimmering like a mirage. You have come too far to turn back now, little one. But every truth revealed costs you more than you can imagine. As if the marketplace was a living entity, it responded to my fear. Its darkness thickened, coiling hungrily around my frame. What do you want? I cried out, desperation coating each word. The price, dear girl, is your own darkness, the figure said, its words silky and inviting yet supremely threatening. You must confront the very essence of what you hide. Embrace it, all of it, or remain lost in the void forever. My heart raced, recollections of sorrow and guilt surged forward, memories of laughter swiftly replaced by agonizing screams. The faces of family and friends flashed before me, reminding me of the choices that led us here, how curious whims could twist into nightmares. But if I do that, if I embrace the darkness, I whispered, the tremor palpable in my voice, what happens to me? A sinister chuckle escaped the figure's lips as shadows encircled my legs, toying with my reality as they threatened to pull me into oblivion. Only what is required for you to know the truth. And yet, those truths will tear you apart. Enough. I shouted defiantly. I would not surrender to despair. Mustering every ounce of courage, I surged forward, propelled towards the looming figures of the past. I will find Thomas. I will save him. And suddenly everything froze. For a heartbeat, the world stilled. Shadows quivered, the whispers ceased, and all that remained was the echo of my own heartbeat and an unnerving silence. I stood in the center of the market, enveloped in a shimmering light that pulsed around me, a beacon willing me to speak the truths I had buried. I wanted to forget, I choked, words spilling from my lips, raw and agonizing. I wanted to erase the pain of having lost so many, to drown out the guilt of not being enough. Each confession corroded my insides, a splintering pain drawing me deeper into the shadows. And I abandoned you, Thomas, tears streaming down my cheeks, grief pouring forth like an open wound. I thought it would keep you safe. I thought it wouldn't hurt this much. The effect was immediate. An overwhelming tide of energy surged around me, shadows swirling in agitation, but it transformed into a twisted form of compassion, mingled with despair. In the next instance, the jars lining the stalls began to reflect fragments of memories, flaring to life with light and color, their pasts revealing truths intertwined with mine. That I could see Thomas standing in one of the jars, backed by laughter and sunlight, a reflection of the joy that had been snatched away far too soon. Guilt set in, curling like smoke around my heart, mixing with a wave of anguish. But yearning to bring him back, I reached out, the glass cool against my fingertips, feeling the weight of existence pressing down on me hard. Open yourself to the truth. The figure urged, shadows swirling frantically, eager for the outcome. Dare to call him back. Thomas. I cried out, coaxing him forth, the memory suspended within a fragile glass bubble. As I pressed my palms against it, I glimpsed the sliver of his essence, as if calling forth a fragment of the boy I had lost long ago. Still holding on to the past, sweet girl. The figure snarled, its patience waning. You cannot shield him from the truth any longer. He will pull you down into the very abyss you sought to avoid. But I wouldn't stop. I poured every ounce of emotion into the contact, the grief, the love, the burden of choices made in haste. Why did you leave? I whispered, feeling a rush of warmth radiate from my heart. Why did I let you go? A low rumble filled the market, shadows surging underfoot in frustrated frenzy. Once a truth is forced into the light, there is no turning back. Your choice may be the end of all that you hold dear. And then it happened, the jar shattered, like ice breaking on warm water, spilling forth a blinding cascade of light and memory that swept through me. At once, I was engulfed, the tears of our shared past pouring forth as I grasped desperately at the luminous energy surrounding me. Thomas emerged, a shimmering figure gliding towards me, face bright with a smile that danced like the very sun. You found me. His voice erupted in laughter, echoing through the marketplace, drowning out the cacophony of shadows, but in that realization, my heart sank where moments before I felt light, my body dimmed as if the shadows had merged together in vengeance, twisting into a monstrous form of chaos. No, I gasped, realizing the depths of my choices against the weight of his presence. Your truth has unraveled, you see. The figure laughed gleefully, shadows curling tighter around me, suffocating any remnants of light. Now you must choose, keep him at your side and bind him to your darkness, or lose him again. Choose him. Choose. The remnants of my heart screamed, but each breath pulled the air from my lungs like poisoned fingers. I refuse to let you take him. But just as the promise of dread closed in, I pivoted, my choice transforming into an echo of power. No. We will enter the light together. I cried out, feeling the weight of Thomas beside me, every ounce of love pouring forth, mingling with my resolve. And all at once, we surged toward the marketplace's core, doused in radiant energy, battling the shadows that snarled and hissed. Silence. I roared, confident, drawing strength from the love I held for Thomas, and plunged deep into the heart of darkness, but the moment of euphoria shattered as darkness surged forward, engulfing us. A scream, no, my scream pierced the thick air of despair as shadows pulled taut around my body once more. My vision blurred, my senses scattered, a cacophony of memories replaying all my failures, all the lost souls, fading, tethering me to a deep void. Then in the infinite darkness, a soft voice whispered, "You cannot run from your own heart." And it would be the last thing I heard before the world quieted, leaving shadows to twist back into their prison, forever mourning the child I could not save. "Help," the soft voice echoed one final time, and I understood then too well that despite my terror and my struggles the pain that tethered us still lurked beneath my skin. The market, alive and hungry, stripped me of the touch of light and cast me into an endless cycle of torment, and in that darkened silence, I understood it all. I was never truly lost, I was never truly free. The weight of the truth curled tighter against my heart. This was what I had feared all along. As the tendrils wrapped around my throat, squeezing tighter, I finally realized the chilling secret hidden within what I had done was not merely about losing someone else, it was about becoming the void myself. And the finality of those thoughts echoed like a horrifying anthem, "You are truly one of us now."